Hey, everybody. We're having a little bit of a quick hangout. This is not going to be very long because obviously I got the Non Sequitur show to do tonight with Paula Gia is going to be on with S.J. Thomason. But Cingeto here is a polytheist, and he's been asking me for quite some time to have a little discussion with him. And due to scheduling issues, we've kind of had to keep postponing and stuff. So I didn't want to, postpone again because we just settled on today. No, we're not waiting on Godot, by the way, Tom. By the way, I actually read the synopsis for Waiting on Godot. That's a depressing story. I don't think I actually want to read the whole thing. If anybody knows the story of Waiting on Godot, very, very strange story to say the least. But anyway, Shannon Q's out there and Magic Pagan. Hey, y'all. So anyways, Shigata, what you got for me, man? What do you want to talk about? And Ocean may be coming in at some point, so he's got the link.
I don't know. I just found this out of my library, and I was just curious if you've ever heard of the book "The Trail of Blood" by J.M. Curl.
I have not.
Oh boy, this is a fun book. Oh, this is the most misinformation you will ever find in the world. Do you know Steven Anderson?
Yes, I do know of Steven Anderson. Yes.
Well, this book, I don't know if he's ever read it, but this is basically marks a big chunk of his beliefs. Do you know what Baptist secessionism is?
Baptist secessionism, is that the belief that baptism is no longer required?
No, it's like a Baptist belief that they're the oldest church in the world, and they were just appeared in various forms throughout the entire history of the world.
Oh, okay, I got okay. So
It's
what
weird.
that would be more along the lines of something along. I was thinking of baptism, not Baptist. That would be along the lines of something along that they had continual succession of some kind of either priesthood or divinity from God or some sort. That they
Something like that.
okay.
That's
What
the
about
term I've used, but it is really, really bad. My friend who's Catholic hates this book. He found it at a because he's Catholic, but he found it at a old thrift store, and it just has all this information about how these supposed other organizations were part of the old church that was supposedly around during the Catholic Church and persecuted. It's a
okay?
really short book. It's like, but I remember Steven Anderson referenced this book. He said he doesn't even have to read it to know that it's true or something. I thought you might find it interesting, but it
Yeah,
is.
I have to question when somebody says, "Well, a book is true, regardless, if I read it or not." It kind of helps if you know what's in it to say something's true or not.
But
Yeah,
it's
he's not
just
exactly a deep thinker, right? I mean,
nah. He's an interesting character though. I'm just really curious what's going to happen to their movement.
hopefully it disappears off the face of the earth. He has a very, very small congregation. I see a lot of indoctrination of children there, and we had this discussion last night on my channel. Where do we draw the line between religious freedom and harms caused by religion?
Oh
And I
yeah.
definitely think that Stephen Anderson is one of those harms caused by religion. I'm very much against that kind of stuff. And so, where do we draw the line ethically? Do we say, look, you cannot teach these kids this type of hatred, or do we allow for it and just hope that society as a whole gets together and shuns these people? I don't know.
Oh yeah. That was a fascinating conversation. I remember listening to that. That was really interesting.
Thank you. We're going to be doing more like that. I've got Nick, who's a philosopher, theist. He's going to be coming on to take kind of an opposite viewpoint. I got SJ wants to come on. So we're going to be doing that at least maybe once or twice a week now, having discussions, roundtable discussions like that, because people have been asking for them. And they just find that on my channel, they get a much fairer platform. And I got a small audience that wants to listen. So why not?
Yeah. There's actually one thing I was thinking about while listening to that. I was curious, what would the effect of such an organization, to monitor the churches and stuff and make sure they're not doing snake handling and dangerous things like that? What kind of effect would that have to corruption to like minority religions? Like, wouldn't like people try to abuse that to get rid of minority religions they don't like?
Yeah. And first of all, just FYI, Shannon Q does not need an excuse to have a drink. Just let me throw that out there. She does not need any kind of game or excuse to have a drink. She's Canadian. So yeah, the thing I see with that is if you have a smaller organization, a smaller church, then they're going to get the brunt of any of these types of positions where you say, hey, we're going to have to like limit or at least oversight what you're teaching to kids. I'm very much against teaching kids young earth creationism, even in a private school. Now I've changed a little bit on that. I used to be a little more, how should I say it? liberal minded, right? I used to say, hey, you know what, it is freedom of religion, and if these people want to teach their kids that, they have a right to. But I really have thought about that very sincerely, and I do want to thank some anti-theist activists that have kind of been putting out some very good videos on these topics. And I thought to myself, look at there we go. Take a drink. That was for you, Shannon. That if we have children being taught things that we know that are just blatantly false, I mean, just to the point where the science can demonstrate that it's not correct, then how does it fall into religious freedom? It's not like they're teaching religious beliefs like, okay, Jesus rose from the dead, which we know biologically has issues. But if people want to believe that from a more spiritual faith kind of thing, I get that, right? But they're not promoting things like young earth creationism as faith. They're promoting it as this is the science. And that's where I kind of draw the line and say, no, 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 no. You cannot tell children that science. You can't say it's scientifically correct. So I have pushed my position a little bit further, I guess, right on that, or would that be left? I don't know how that would be.
It would be authoritarian upwards, but I think it would be like on the compass. That'd probably be a bit more authoritarian. Not that it's a bad thing, but I think that would still
Sure,
fall
I
into
agree with
that.
you. Yeah, it'd be upper right, authoritative.
Would it be
Yeah,
right? Because
authoritarian.
right tends to be more
Yeah,
towards.
because authoritarian would be upper right quadrant, wouldn't
Well,
it?
you can be authoritarian left too.
Sure. I
Uh,
don't know if this would be right or left. I have no idea. You know what? It all blends together. People are so far right they've actually become left, and people are so far
yeah,
left they've actually become
horseshoe
right.
theory and stuff.
Yeah. So
That's
I don't.
interesting.
Yeah, there's a whole thing on the whole window that what's it called window where it's just like looking into these types of political things. People get so extreme that it's hard to even tell where they're even at on the spectrum any longer because the
They're
whole
not.
window
They're like.
shifts.
But yeah, I get what you're saying. I understand that point. I agree because that's what I'm being taught in school right now. So I understand. I understand that. But what I'm scared about is
Or the
like,
Overton window, by the way. I couldn't think of the name. Overton window.
hmm,
Are you familiar with that?
no, I'm not.
Yeah. Check out the Overton window. It's basically a window on political viabilities and how they change over time from politicians and society. It's a fascinating thing.
It does sound really interesting.
Yeah.
I'll check that out definitely. But think because you know how people like to spread misinformation about various smaller religions and stuff that are just trying to grow and just trying to do their own thing. I was scared that there'd be a lot of corruption into a system like that, not just for like small church denominations, but for completely different religions, like say Jainism or something. I don't think you could do that to Jainism, but something like that, you could come up with some kind of weird theory about it and then corrupt the courts and stuff and then cause havoc for them because of this kind of system. I'm just
Well,
worried
I
about
agree.
that happening.
There's a checks and balances that have to be had, right? And I said last night, there's not a one size fits all way to approach these problems. I mean, but to ignore them, I don't think we have the luxury of ignoring them any longer. Too many things have been happening. Too many crimes have been committed. Too many atrocities have been committed. Too many children have died because of fuckery. And I'm honestly kind of sick of it, to be honest with you. I really have gotten to the point where I'm like, yeah. It's like the Second Amendment too. I used to be very, very pro Second Amendment, but I've modified my position on that too, realizing, you know what? There has to be some kind of restraint. There has to be some kind of line of demarcation. There has to be a point where we say enough is enough. And I'm moving much more in the center on a lot of things in that regard, right? So, because I think the center would be we need compromise. We need to take a compromised approach and saying, look, people want their freedoms, but they also want their safety. People want their religious freedom, but they also want students being taught the correct things. But anyways, you want to do more talk about polytheism? I think you wanted to
I
like
could.
ask me about
I
that.
mean, I could. I'm still pretty new to the religion, but I could too. I don't know. This stuff when I listened to it last night was like very interesting to me because I never thought about this before because I could never have imagined something happening. But that's kind of that. I don't know. That stuff just intrigues my imagination so much.
What do you know? I mean, what pantheon do you subscribe to?
Right now, the Gaulish and the Tuatadanan.
I would have any
That's a
idea what either
lot.
of those are. Yeah,
That's a
for
lot.
the
That's
lay
like
person here, can you tell me what the hell that means? Because I
just
honestly
Celtic,
don't know.
just Celtic in
Okay,
general.
Celtic, I know.
Okay, there's multiple pantheons. Celtic, which because different regions. There's the Welsh, there's the Brythonic, and then I think Brythonic and Gaulish some have some overlap, and then there's also the Tuatha which is Gaelic.
Okay, I'm going to take your word for that because I got to tell you, when I don't know something, I'm happily ready to say, look, I'm completely clueless of what you're talking about. I don't mind. I really don't. A lot of people don't do that. They're like, oh yeah, I'm an expert on everything kind of thing. And they just start talking about topics they have no idea what the hell they're saying.
Oh,
And they're kind of just parroting a
G-Man.
little bit and repeating what people are saying. And I'm like, no, you clearly don't know what the hell you're talking about. I have
I used to
no
do
idea what
that.
you're talking about. I don't. I avoid that like the plague. I think it's just ridiculous to start talking about something you don't know nothing about. You just be like, hey, I'm not aware of this stuff. Why don't you tell me about it so I become a little bit more familiarized with it.
Okay.
Ocean, I gave you a link like in multiple different ways.
Who?
Ocean's in the live chat.
Oh, I told him on a Discord.
Yeah.
So
You gave him on Discord. I gave him on the internal, and I gave him on Twitter. So,
but basically,
he's a
because
polytheist, he can't figure this stuff out. Whatever.
but there's also some overlap within the Gaulish and the Roman, because Gaul is where France used to be. If you're familiar with that,
a little, I guess.
Celtic is basically an overlapping of linguistic groups, so it's a very broad term, kind of like saying African.
Yeah, no, I get that much. Like, I love what is the name of that the band, the Celtic Women?
Never heard of that one.
Oh my God, they're gorgeous and they're master musicians. I mean, they're multi-talented. So, yeah, I'm kind of a little. Plus, I like a Patty Gurdy. She plays the Gurdy in the group Stormseeker.
Ocean, join the call.
Yay! Yeah, Ocean's in here. I'm outnumbered now. Two polytheists or agnostic. What can happen? What can go wrong, people? This is not going to end well. Hail Odin. Sorry.
Well, thank you for that.
Yeah, well, hey, dude, I got no loyalty to anybody. I don't care shit. I'll say praise Jesus as much as I'll say hail Odin, whatever.
So yeah, Cingeto told me that he wanted to have this conversation. I was that like he wanted to start getting into polytheist conversations on YouTube and stuff, and I was like, hey, start with Steve McRae. He'll be good.
But I'm not polytheist.
Well, yeah, but you're probably the most musical guy I know.
I was like, hey, he'll be somebody that it'd be good to introduce you to like the great debate community and all that stuff. So,
okay. I was wondering because he's been trying to get a hold of me, and it's just anybody can get a hold of me. That's not terribly difficult, but for finding time to do some of this stuff,
right?
Not as easy as you may think.
Yeah, I got you.
So I'm sorry for taking time or anything.
Oh no, I love this kind of stuff.
Oh, okay.
No.
Steve,
it's not that.
Steve loves these kind of conversations. He's got a really busy schedule.
Yeah, I mean, we got the show to do. I usually take about 2 hours before every show, or at least maybe an hour at the minimum to kind of look into the what's going to be in the topic and get things organized. And we start about an hour early sometimes, or at least a half hour to do audio checks. And plus, I'm preparing for other things. I'm going to be on the NGC Studios, The Place, on Wednesday with Dr. Jones and Stephen Hoyt, and I'm going to have another hangout on Thursday with Nick, who's a philosopher on anti-theism, which if anybody wants to join, Shannon.
NGC, is that? Wait, are you talking about New Covenant Group?
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, I've been hesitant to go on there. They've been asking me forever, and I've had hesitation only for the fact that I figured it out. I was like, why am I so scared of Dr. Jones, right? I mean, I think the world of him. He's a genius. He's brilliant beyond brilliant. And I thought, maybe it's more than just that. And then I recognized just today, matter of fact, that he's a linguist. And because people are now recognizing that I do have these speech problems and I do very much be self-aware of these things, and it drives me nuts. Matter of fact, when I make a video, people don't realize I don't make a lot of single videos because I will sit there and take 13 different takes to do one sentence because I notice voice things that just bother me, right? And so I was thinking, God, if I'm going to be going to the place and I'm going to sound like a total fucking idiot because he's not just brilliant, but he's also a linguist. That's what I think was my fear. I was talking to Hoyt about that today. So.
He'll just call you out.
No, he wouldn't. I mean, he's a nice guy. He's not. That's not his shtick, right?
Yeah, he's not. He's generally not like that.
And he loves my channel.
He at least attempts to be a really understanding fellow.
Yeah. No disrespect to him by any means. I think he's awesome.
Yeah, right.
Go ahead. Sorry.
No, that was it. So Cingeto, I know you wanted to have this conversation. What did you want to go into? Or I guess what's already been covered? Because you sent me this message maybe 2 or 3 minutes ago.
I really just wanted to see where this conversation led because I like flexible conversations a lot more. And I don't know. I was thinking about doing something about polytheism, but then I listened to his other conversation about religious monitoring or something like that along those lines, and that just piqued my interest too. If
You've been getting really interested in polytheist apologetics lately. I know that, and that's been kind of neat to like have conversations with you about because like Steve, this guy's a sponge. he's been learning pretty quickly, which is really neat.
I've only been like this for a few months, so
right.
Well, that's good. I mean, people want to learn about these topics, and I think that you bringing him to the Great Debate community and getting him introduced to people would be an amazing way to do it because we all imagine back in the day, Ocean, back when you and I were back in Nadia's room, and
right.
Well, we were not idiots, but you can't say that we were as informed on a lot of the arguments as we are now.
Right. No, he's starting at a much better place than I started. For example, like I started with just like basically atheists coming at me, and I was like,
yeah. You were attacked from both sides. Well, the Christians hated you, the atheists
Christians too, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Christians were worse than the atheists, to be fair.
Well, I know Christianity a whole lot better than the other guys. I can do Christianity a lot easier.
Well, what drew you to polytheism over something like Christianity? I mean, what was the reason why you said, hey, you know what, I'm going to believe in this Celtic pantheon rather than the most common religions?
Dude, I don't like common religions. They're all pretty weird, except for Hinduism. I like them pretty well. But the reason I was drawn is partially to do with some supernatural experiences, and partially, well, if you understand my background, I came from Messianic Judaism, and I'm not ethnically Jewish.
Mm-hmm.
So it made me drive to look for what my ancestors believe, and it gave me a drive into that. And then I looked into it, and then hearing Ocean talk about the logic of it made me really curious into it. So I did a lot more research and stuff. So a lot of that came out of where I came from.
That was because he came to he wound up finding his way into one of my pagan education servers at one point, and I didn't realize he had like listening to me had gotten him into it at first, and we were just talking back and forth, and then he was like, yeah, like you're the person that got me interested in this in the first place. And I was like, what? Oh, my heart warms.
Well, I mean, but Ocean, you're not an evangelistic polytheist. I've never heard you go around saying you've got to believe this pantheon. Yeah.
Oh, but he provided logic, and I already had the want to drive to do it. I just needed some kind of basis for my brain to actually think about it.
Uh-huh.
Right, and that's the thing where it's like if you, like, I don't. Again, I agree with you, Steve. I'm not evangelistic, but if somebody winds up being convinced, I'm not going to tell them not to be.
no, dude, I get it, right? It's like, I've had people tell me, yeah, Steve, I thought about what you've said, and I agree with you. I looked into it, and you're right. This is philosophical atheism and agnosticism, and I want to be, in line with the literature. I'm going to call myself an agnostic now, and I'm like, okay, I'm not trying to convert them to do it, but they've decided to. I'm not going to stop them, right?
Yeah, and Cingeto came to me. And it was like. Do you have some sources and stuff like that? And I tossed him a couple of books, and then he was like, all right, I'm done with them. I was what? Okay. So I've thrown you to Ronald Hutton, right?
Yeah, I've done a little bit of reading on him. I've also gone to some other guys like John Greer. I read the World Full of Gods book, and I'm going to read his Druidry book and a bunch of other stuff too. And then I
recently got his Druidry book, so if you read that, you're ahead of me.
Okay, I'm reading it right now. There's a free PDF. So,
oh yeah.
I mean, yeah, I keep looking for the free PDFs mostly.
Shoot me that PDF because I'll put it in Mead Hall. But
I'll give it to you.
The thing that you're seeing that like you put a book in front of him, all of a sudden it's read, and he comes back and he's like, hey, that was really interesting, and I feel like I've learned a lot. What's the next thing? I'll toss him another book. And I think, did you get into Stephen Dillon yet?
No, I haven't gotten that one yet.
So for anybody that's listening it's interested in getting into polytheist philosophy, A World Full of Gods by John Michael Greer is the first one that I tossed to him, which has a philosophical layout of polytheism. And then beyond that, but Greer's not a PhD in philosophy. He's writing from a layman's standpoint. Stephen Dillon's book, Case for Polytheism, is written by a philosophy PhD named Stephen Dillon. And he goes through like more traditional structure of arguments regarding like a polytheist criticism of the Kalam. And, he even goes into moral arguments for polytheism. which are all really interesting.
Yeah, all I know about polytheism is what I learned watching American Gods. That's it.
Get out of my house, Steve.
Yeah, that was based on a true story, right? That's a documentary, is it not?
Yeah, no,
Okay.
that I was as in fact, that's reality TV.
Ah,
It's a that was the crew, being crew on that was weird.
yeah, I can imagine.
heard.
I mean, the producers didn't stage any of that, I'm sure.
And also working with Odin's schedule.
He's got to be a little bit of a
is a
diva,
mess.
I would imagine.
Yeah, no, it's difficult. Because like, he sleeps hanging from trees, and it's strange. Waking him up is kind of a jarring experience for some people.
Nice. Is there a season? I heard season 3 is coming out, or maybe it just came out actually.
Season 3? I haven't even seen season 1. I've seen 2 episodes of season 1.
Yeah,
So there's
like
2
the next
seasons
season.
now.
Yeah, what was it? Season 3 or season 2? I guess it came out.
Maybe
season 2.
That, like, if there was a season, I don't know. Anyway,
remember the
my
last
roommate
episode
read the
I saw,
book.
but
I haven't
remember
read the
season
book.
1 or 2.
But
Oh, it was season 1. Okay, so when's season 2? Is it? God, I thought it was
I
out
don't know.
already.
It came, like the first season came out some time ago. I just haven't gotten around to watching it. But Ian, I think it's Ian McShane playing Odin, which is, I think it's Ian McShane. Am I right?
Oh, how would I know what his name is? I know what he looks like though.
Yeah, it's Ian McShane. It's from Deadwood, and he played Blackbeard in the Pirates of the Caribbean. Great actor. He was also in Game of Thrones. I really like listening to him. So I want to see it. I just haven't seen it. So, but anywho,
You haven't seen season 1 at all?
not of American Gods. No.
Oh, it's worth watching.
I've seen the first 2 episodes, and I was into it.
Watch them all.
I had
Yeah,
something
no,
else
watch
to do.
them all. It gets better.
Cool.
I was really impressed by it.
Was there any impression?
People keep asking me if like that's how it works. I'm like, I don't know enough about to answer that question. I think that it's like, I think that it has to do with the question of like whether or not worshippers give power to the gods or something like that, which I don't think is the case.
Yeah, well, that was the whole thing, right? I mean, that gods only are gods as long as they have people actually actively worshiping them. That's where they get their power from.
Did they get the idea from like Cherry Pratchett? Because I remember when I read his books, I love that guy. He's a great author. When I read his books, that was generally the kind of thing he espoused. Was it earlier than that, or did it come from him?
I think it might be something that's earlier than that. But I was talking with Mark/Lettuce Cingeto. Have you talked to him?
I think. Is he on the Discord, or where is he?
Yeah, he is. But he's a he has a blog called I think of Axe and Plow. And I was talking with him. He's a really good polytheist writer. And his blog I reference to people that are really interested. He was saying that like that's not a historical view at all.
Yeah, it's recent. I heard about that. I just didn't know like where it came from.
Like it's not something that the Romans believed or anything like, or even the Norse. It's like something that popped up. I think he said it was something. The earliest examples of it popped up in the 1800s of like beliefs like that. If that's how polytheism worked, but it's not based on any like historical data. So,
yeah, I have to take your word for that because, like I said, I've heard otherwise. But again, when you're around these topics for a very long time, you hear all kinds of stuff. So, I did hear that the Romans did believe that the gods got their power from their worshippers, and that's why when they were saying that these Christians were atheists, it was because they were denying their worship to the gods. So they were saying, no, we're not going to worship your state.
The criticism of that had more to do with the social structure than it did with the safety of the gods.
Well,
they didn't think that the gods were under threat. They thought that society was like that. The denial of the gods.
Well, let's ask the gods. Can you bring them in so we can?
Let's talk to Marcus Aurelius real quick and see what he has.
That'd be cool.
But what they thought was like the Pax Romana, they let you keep your religious beliefs, but like orthopraxy and stuff, you got to do it so our entire government doesn't collapse.
So it was one of those.
They thought that. No, it was more like with Christianity. Christianity was weird because it was like pushing back against Roman thought in the first place. In a way that was like, because they accepted Stoicism, and there's atheistic versions of Stoicism, and there were atheistic philosophers in Rome. Cicero writes about them, and he's like, there's these guys that think that the gods don't exist, and they're respected philosophers. So it wasn't like a problem to even be an atheist necessarily. It was Christianity had this like exclusionary view, that
spread
was
like a
you're
virus,
you're
too.
wrong for worshiping the gods, which was what Rome was pushing back against. Of like, no, that this is like so much of our society is based on this, and you're just saying like it's immoral to follow it. What's going on here? And then the fight escalated, obviously. But yeah, it kept escalating, and then eventually reversed, and then got into where we have stuff like the Northern Crusades with Charlemagne and the Teutonic Knights and so on, where they're actually like committing essentially genocide against pagans.
The Carolingian and Merovingian empires, if I'm saying it right, probably not.
The what?
The Carolingian and the Merovingian empires. I probably am butchering the name so bad.
Bet you are, because I don't recognize those words.
Dude, this is what like people hear when I start talking about propositional logic and stuff. It's
just the names. It's just the names of the empires of the Franks and stuff.
Oh,
yeah,
I gotcha. It's like I've just referred to them as like that's also like a part of history that I'm not super familiar with as far as like the Frankish aspect of it. I'm more familiar with the Saxon and Flemish side of it. But even then, it's only lightly like you're talking about like 500 to 800, like that period of time.
Yeah, around that time. I also downloaded a document or put it in my notes. Sorry, what were you saying?
That's hard mode for me. I haven't researched too far into that period.
Oh, I love the migration era and stuff. I like that period.
Oh yeah, the migration era is like where I start to get interested. So
where do you guys want to directly kind of go with this? Because like I said, I don't have too long.
I think that Cingeto and I are just talking back and forth. But I guess what we can do is, Steve, just since we're borrowing your time, be like, okay, so as far as polytheism goes, like what you and I have talked forever about polytheism.
Yeah, but we have one discussion we haven't done yet, and I'm really kind of looking forward to it. We won't do it now, but we have to have the discussion about knowledge of gods. And, you know what that would actually mean, because I've been doing some really kind of deep thinking on that, and I'm not rescinding what I said, right? I'm not retracting it, but I'm sussing it out more. Well, because if we take for example,
it's like like epistemology conversations always wind up getting complicated when you start throwing theism into it.
Well, and this is a complicated topic because I don't believe in the pantheonic deities, right? And you do believe, right? But when it comes to knowledge, I'm trying to suss out how I could epistemically say I know something like Thor does not exist. It's a very complicated process dealing with truth makers, and I'm thinking, what is the truth maker that would make something like Thor true? Right, because you say that you were trying to make the argument that you were maybe saying I know Thor exists, right? So
no, that's not what I was doing. I said
I'm not saying that
under a definition that you were putting forward. It was like maybe I could say that.
Right. But I want to clarify that you weren't arguing that you know Thor exists. You were arguing under those definitions. Would you be able to be justified to say that?
Right,
and I think that's an interesting argument.
The problem with it, I think, was that it requires an externalist confirmation of some kind. And I don't think that that's accessible. So the either confirmation or denial of the externalist confirmation.
I would take it as an internalist justification.
Oh, if it's internalist, then I can say I know.
Yeah, and that is a huge distinction, right? Are we going from external or internal justifications? Right. From an externalist point of view, I don't think I would be able to justify that, saying I know Thor doesn't exist. Now I know a lot of people don't understand why on that, but. Here's the thing.
The thing is that from an internal perspective, we can both say, you can say I know Thor doesn't exist, and I can say I know Thor does exist, and we can both be right.
Because
we're both looking at different internals.
Right. But one thing consistent even with internal would be that the proposition has to be true. For knowledge, P has to be true. So if
if you're going to say that it's true, that requires externalist confirmation. That's where the
justification would be internal, right? But you can't just override the fact that the proposition has to be true. Ontologically, one of us has to be right. If I say I know Thor doesn't exist, and you say you know he does or he doesn't, and so
right. But the ontological fact of the matter would be an externalist claim, not an internalist claim.
It's like based on which perspective.
I don't. I think the externalist would be, of course, the ontology, but the justification is internalized. Or do I have that confused? This external and external stuff always kind of
right. I think this would be a good conversation to dig into at some point. Definitely.
Yeah.
I'm not quite sure
Yeah, I'm
Maybe
gonna have
you
to
have
do
that,
more
Chris Ross.
research on that because it's confusing. Because this is where I know.
This is where Reformed epistemology like lives in with Christians.
Yeah.
By the way.
Yeah. Oh, definitely. Yeah, this is how they think that theism is rational. Exactly, and also that Seitan Bernicate and precepts love to they love to have an external justification. They appeal to the knowledge of God,
Seen those
but they want you to
debates.
do an internal, right? And so it's like they're not playing in the
Correct.
same field.
Right.
I see that a lot.
And
Yeah.
I think that if you're going to be playing the external conversation,
Stick with
then
it.
right, or the internal conversation, then stick with it.
Yep.
Or at least announce when you're switching, because one of the problems that is the problem that I have with presuppositionalism is that it switches without telling you what it's doing.
I see that all the time. That's exactly what it is. And this is what bugs me with it when they start with an external justification and argument, and then they want you to give an internalized one. It's like no, you can't play that game.
Right. But I think that from an internalist conversation, as far as like if you get an internalist definition of knowledge, I can say I know Thor exists, and you can say I know Thor doesn't exist, and we'd both be correct. That's part of the problem with having pure internalism in the conversation. Even though ontologically you can say that only one of us is actually correct, we both have internal justification.
Yeah, no, okay. I get what you're saying on that, because when we're saying we have internal justification, that means that we have sufficient warrant to say that we have that position, that propositional state. So you might be right on that, but it's hard to wrap your head around because you're so used to the analysis of logic where you have certain conditions.
Only one of those things can be true.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
So you have P has to be true, and you have to believe P, and you have to be either justified or have some kind of truth tracking thing. But yeah, we're going to get in that discussion. We'll bring some people in on it. Thursday, I have a discussion with Nick and some other people. If you want in on it, it's going to be on anti-theism, like I said before you got here. I just
became available Thursday, so because my shoot switched dates,
and then
so I should be able to do that.
We'll do it.
Bring
me topics.
I'll be busy next week, but we can talk.
Okay.
We can go through the complicated scheduling and live, or we can just do it later. But but as far as like polytheism conversations have gone, now that Cingeto's here, now there's two of us, Steve.
Dude, do you ever see me run? Please.
No, of course not. That's one of the reasons I fucking like you don't. You're the opposite of somebody who fucking runs. You're like you keep fighting when you probably should stop. But clip that, people, so that you know it's like Ocean never criticizes Steve. I definitely criticize Steve.
Oh yeah. Oh, people don't even know the we've had knockdown, drag out fucking brawls in private conversations.
We've yelled at each other a couple of times, but
you know what'd be interesting?
Go for it.
Or you're about to say something.
No, I was gonna, as far as like bringing it to the point, would be like, Steve, what are there objections that you have to polytheism? Are there curiosities that you have about it? Because like, Cingeto's Celtic and I'm Norse, so we're gonna have two different perspectives on that.
Will you guys go to war over it? That'd be really cool.
You know, maybe.
Okay.
But wait, philosophically, Cingeto and I are mostly the same page.
Well,
and
except
this is
for
like,
one thing,
which is
I believe in objective truth.
You
don't
I
you
am
not?
agnostic on it. I think that I think I'm agnostic on objective truth regarding morality.
I say objective truth. I meant objective morality. I'm sorry, I said objective truth.
I was just saying there are objective truths. That's a given. I mean,
sorry, I meant objective morality.
That's what I thought that you meant.
I'm okay with objective morality is, but I'm not going to argue one way or another on it. But I'm okay with it existing given a specific framework. Sure.
Yeah, I mean, within a like objective truth is like a fact of the matter of reality. I do agree with. I think that there is one. But I also think that there's several aspects about it that are inaccessible. Which Steve, I don't think you have a problem with.
No. There are objective facts. But my arguments have always been that there are objective facts. However, they might be epistemically outside of our ability to ever understand them or evaluate them. Yeah.
Yeah.
That reminds me that there are some psychologists and stuff who did studies though that found that our memories or our brain will rewrite what we see in our memories to where we see something else, and that could be an interesting addition to that argument about how we can't actually see much objective, or we can see somewhat but not really true objective.
Illusion makes it more inaccessible than we would logically think that it would be. Yeah, I agree with that.
That's what
just the way that our brains function creates another level of illusory. And I've had that being used as an argument against theism, but it can also be used as an argument for theism. Like that's a double-edged sword. So, meh. But Steve, like to bring it back to you, as now that there's two of us here, there are like questions that you have about like why the fuck or
well, I mean, it's just like any other thing when you have Christians that come to very different viewpoints, right? I mean, here you have two different pantheons that you've come to, and I'm the first person to say weird things happen, right? I think we've all had some kind of experiences where we just cannot explain it, right? And I've had to think long and hard. The experiences I had don't get me to where I can say this came from a deity. It doesn't follow, right? I need a causal chain of events that I can't put together. And if God knows me well enough that he knows that's what I would need, he would have given me that causal chain that I'm looking for, right?
I think that appeals to an omnipotent deity as well.
Oh, absolutely.
Which polytheists don't hold to. So
I don't think there's any. Do you, Ocean?
An omnipotent deity?
Yeah. Do you think any of them are?
No, I don't think so.
Okay.
So with that, like Cingeto and I, even though we have, we follow different gods mainly. Like I think that, if you listed off the gods that Cingeto and I follow, the crossover is very thin. I think like we both follow Morrigan, but you don't follow Thor, for example.
I do one guy who's similar. Turnus is similar, so
right. So, and when you get Thor and Turnus as a conversation between us, there's two ways that we can go about it. We can either say they're different deities, or in fact they're the same deity. But
you don't deny that
we're not gonna. We don't argue over it.
But the ones you don't follow, you don't deny their existence, do you?
So,
no.
Pardon?
For example, if Cingeto has a deity that he follows, you don't deny that deity's existence. You just say you don't follow that particular one.
Correct.
So you're just denying that your worship of that deity.
Polytheism is an additive philosophy, basically, for as far as philosophy of religion.
Now, is there any gods that you just don't accept, that you think they're just outright do not exist?
When they're logically incoherent, yes.
What about, so like an omni god that's with the presence of evil would be logically inconsistent. I get that. But what about a deity that's just, I don't know, I mean, just your random run-of-the-mill deity?
The best,
like Apollo or something. I don't know.
I don't have a problem with Apollo. I don't have like Roman deities. I'm a multi-traditionalist, so I follow the Celtic, the Norse, and the Roman. Cingeto, I believe you're just the Celt, correct?
Yeah, I'm looking into Bossk right now, but they don't really have that many deities, but but mostly just Celtic. Yeah.
So, I was going somewhere with that, but but you don't deny, say, the Germanic gods, or at least you would say that the Germanic gods are an interpretation of yours.
They could be. I'm not going to say either way because I don't really think it's that important to get into.
Right. Neither do I.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know the Romans thought, so that's why they list off Turnus as like Jupiter, I think. If I'm right.
Yeah, I believe so, because Thor is also Jupiter.
And then Lugus would be like Mercury, and I think, and then something like that.
And then Mercury is translated into Odin in the Religio Roma. So what he's referencing is Religio Roma, which is the essentially Roman translation for other religions around them. That the Romans believed that people following other religions were actually worshiping the gods, but with different faces and names. So when they saw Thor, they would say, "Oh, that's Jupiter," because it's the sky god. Thunder is a regalness to him, and all those kind of things. There are differences. But that was the Roman interpretation of it. I would say, okay. And whenever they would see them worshiping Odin, they would say, "Oh, that's Hermes or Mercury."
Different names for the same deity.
Right. That's how they saw it. But a lot of modern polytheists, which E.P. Butler, another philosophy PhD polytheist, puts forward that he goes a completely different direction with it, where instead of going to Religio Roma, he acknowledges all deities separately. So any Mayan deities or Roman deities or Celtic deities, he would see them all as separate, rather than being some kind of translation or face through tradition interpretation. I think the face through tradition interpretation makes more sense given the knowledge, given the chain of knowledge justification in polytheism, you do wind up with room for error. So it makes sense that you would have one group of people interpret a certain force as Jupiter and another group of people interpret it as Thor. So I'm likened to that view, but I also don't. It doesn't matter to me either way, and I think Cingeto is the same way.
But it's also a slippery slope, though, too, if you do that, because then someone else could take the position. Sorry, did I cut you off, Steve?
No, go ahead.
But then someone could take the position that they're all just one god, or they're all just a duo, which,
Right.
you know, but because it's a slippery slope, so I try to stay away from that. But I mean, I'm not opposed to it either.
And I think that that slippery slope aspect, I think that you can say, well, there's at least a pantheon of gods. What finite number is does that mean? I don't know, but it would be greater than the number one, because one god supposes these ideas of omnipotence and like a lot of monotheistic arguments that can be philosophically assailed like crazy, especially when you start trying to apply omnibenevolence to it. With polytheism, though, it solves so many of those problems, so it makes sense to then therefore conclude that the number of deities would be greater than one, because of the sheer amount of philosophical problems that it solves just by adding one, even one.
Like in Zoroastrianism.
Well, if you have one, yeah. See, the thing is, if you have one god, then it in any possible world, then it doesn't. To me, then it's quite possible there could be more. I mean, that first domino
Right.
is the thing, sir.
Yeah. Once you acknowledge one god, why deny the second?
Yeah. I
Yeah.
mean, I don't have an issue with that, and I think that even in Christianity, in monolateralism, or henotheism, or the approach that, hey, I worship one God, the monotheistic deity, some of them actually proffer that even God says there's other gods, but he just says he's the host of hosts, and he's the head of them all, and he's in charge. But some argue that he acknowledges that there are other deities out there.
He does. You want an example?
Sure.
There's where he gets whooped by another god. Would you like that?
Oh, the king of Moab?
Yeah, when the Kermosh, I put it in the Twitter. When that guy whoops him through like a human sacrifice and stuff.
Yeah, there's a passage in the Bible, I think it's the king of Moab. The Israelites are attacking another empire, I think Moab, and the king does a human sacrifice that stops God and prevents the prophecy from coming true.
I thought that was the Iron Chariots thing.
No, that was a different one, I think.
Okay.
No, I think that's a I think the Iron Chariot, is that the one where the chariots get stuck in the mud?
No, that was the rain
That's an
with
Egyptian
the
thing.
other guy. The other chariots where God couldn't attack them because they're made of iron or something like that. And then in another passage, he does attack them because they are of iron. And then that's somewhere in like Samuel, I think. I can't remember.
Samuel is where a lot of that stuff is, because like the saga of David is full of things like that.
Yeah, but it could be in Samuel or Kings. Probably Judges, though, because that's the one where most of the wars are. I studied the Bible, so I know this stuff. But yeah.
The king of Moab, I think I want to say that's in Kings. The funny thing is that a Christian of an open theist persuasion sent me that, and he believes the reason why he sent me that was to support his argument for open theism, because that would mean that, like, I think he supports the idea of there being other gods. He just says that they're demons.
Is that the street pastor guy?
No, a friend of his.
Oh.
A friend of his, but it's a street preacher that I've become friends with, who's this open theist thing that believes that God's sovereignty doesn't cover human free will. So he believes that humans can surprise God with their decisions, which would mean demons can do the same thing, which then explains for the king of Moab's sacrifice against God stopping the all-powerful, like stopping Yahweh from invading with the protection of a different deity. So it's like a polytheist interpretation of Christianity that's supported by the Bible, which is crazy. I'd never heard a Christian argue for that before, and I was just like, that's wonderful. Okay, cool.
More unity.
Now, what? But why do you think that these gods are not just made up? Like, what? I mean, there's something to be said by naturalistic arguments that people saw these things happen, they saw these events happen, and they couldn't explain it because they didn't know the science. And they said, we're just going to posit some being doing this because we do see people doing stuff. So for them to kind of have this anthropomorphized version of a deity makes sense to me, right? I mean, I think that is a very rational explanation of why we have these types of deities, and they were in charge of these aspects. And by the way, it wasn't just American Gods where I learned some stuff from. If you ever want to read a brilliant series on this, go read Incarnations of Immortality by Piers Anthony.
Okay.
Holy shit, that is one of the best goddamn series ever written. The first book is called On a Pale Horse, and it's about Thanatos. It's fucking brilliant.
Oh,
it has Mars as God, as Satan. And Satan is cool. Satan is cool.
Sounds interesting. Cool. But one point, or sorry, Ocean, were you about to say something?
Yeah, I was going to say that as far as the gods being like an anthropomorphized aspects of nature, I know how I'd respond to that, but I want to toss it to Cingeto since he's my trainee essentially now.
One thing I would say is I do definitely think that the anthropomorphism, it has been made up, but I think it's supposed to be symbolic. Like, I don't believe in like a literal hammer wielding Sucilus. Well, this also can translate as a wine barrel on a pole, but I don't believe in it literally because I also know the ancient Celts laughed at the Romans for having them look like people. But because I'm pretty sure that's historical. I saw it in a documentary, so I'm pretty sure it's right. But I don't believe it's a literal like that, but I think it's supposed to be symbolic to get you to understand something when you see it. Kind of like how these grand buildings and stuff a long time ago, before they had books and literacy, were used to show something, show art, and show something to represent and get you into your mind. Like the giant cathedrals and stuff that were gorgeous, it gave people the idea, okay, this is a holy place, I can go here. I think that the symbols of them were supposed to be meant for that, so you'd understand it quickly, especially within an illiterate society.
So the way that I'd respond to it, and this is a book I haven't thrown at you yet, Cingeto, but I would go with Cicero's On the Nature of the Gods, where he discusses what the base idea for belief in the gods is essentially that it boils down to experience and intuition. That it seems that people have an intuition toward the gods, so it's at least worthy of positing them and seeing where we can go from there. And he also acknowledges in that there's several different ways of interpreting the gods, and he also and by extension to that says that either all of the ideas that we have about the ontology of the gods are wrong, or one of them is right, but they cannot all be right. So it winds up with a complex conversation, and there's a lot of arguments to make, but the only way that we're going to be advancing in the argument is to first put forward a positing. Butler, who's a modern polytheist PhD, talks about how he expands on the intuition argument by then also talking about agency and intention being put onto something else. And I'm not sure if I agree with this particular argument, but he believes that when the intention is put external to yourself, it is being put onto something, and that which is the intention is being put forward onto is the agency of a deity. And I think that that has some problems with begging the question, but it is an interesting kind of like exploration into the subject.
Well, but giving your belief to them, giving your worship or whatever, doesn't change their agency, right? I mean, if these are individual minds that have their own autonomy and own agency, then how does one reach the conclusion that these are actual entities that have some kind of existence rather than just, we're going to call this explanation for this Thor, right? We see lightning. Oh, it's Thor.
I'd refer back to Cicero about the intuition matter, but I'd also say, and this is another thing that Greer points out with regards to certainty, that if you're looking for a certainty argument, like something that's waterproof, you're not going to be able to. You're not finding it as far as an argument for or against them. So, what the polytheist does, as far as the uncertainty is concerned, is embracing that experience, embracing that intuition, and then moving forward in a way that is spiritually engaging. Now, that's something that if you're going to be like a hard empiricist or something like where you need like some sort of demonstrable evidence that isn't a logical experiment, that's not going to work for them, right? But for people that this kind of approach does kind of work with, where it's like, no, I have had some experiences that make me want to explore this subject. I do think that this makes sense. My intuition pulls me in this direction. That and phrased otherwise could be like, well, I do feel the gods calling to me, so to speak.
That's the problem.
More...
Obviously, though, I mean, that's just saying, well, I have this intuition, I have this feeling. It doesn't have a causal link to saying, well, this is what is causing that feeling. This is because I want it to be this.
If you can rephrase it,
what's the reason where you think that the explanation is what you're positing it to be? Like if I say, I believe Thor exists, and I have these.
That's where you start logically checking.
Okay, well, how would you logically check something like that?
And Cicero was kind of going through this. It's like, if you're going to be putting forward an idea that about the god's existence, because humans seem to have this, like almost universally, this pull. Even today, humans across the planet generally are religious, and even a lot of like atheists that you bump into, they have like some kind of spirituality, but they don't go with like gods or something. Like they go with something else that's similar, but like you get a lot of like odd atheist spiritualities that exist, because people generally are kind of pulled in this direction. So Cicero was going, well, since this is a thing, it's a worthy conversation to have. But if we're going to have the conversation, we need to do it with logical examination. And that's the part. I think that the danger in it is going to be trying to say this is incontrovertibly true, which as soon as you get polytheists to start to say that kind of thing, that's where I think that there's a problem. It's like, no, you can't say that. You don't know that. When you start trying to say that it's incontrovertibly true, or that atheism is illogical or something like that. Atheism is definitely logical.
Yeah, no,
I'm just as polytheism is.
No, I get that, but again, I think you're misunderstanding my question. I do agree that these feelings people have had for a very long time. There is something to be said that we might have a God part of the brain or whatever it is. People are predisposed to have these kinds of beliefs. I get that. I also make the argument. Well, I haven't started to, but I kind of think about this last couple of weeks that there is something to be taken from the fact that so many people have a belief in a deity that I think it's wrong to dismiss it by fiat, right? I think it's wrong for people to put in the same ontological category as saying, leprechauns. Well, no.
Right.
I know leprechauns don't exist. I know fairies don't exist. I know vampires don't exist. I know the mythos of all that. And I think it's a scope error to say that by fiat, we're just going to randomly dismiss God beliefs because they're in the same supernatural category, because I do think there's something to be said because so many people have had experiences, and I just don't want to write all that off as bullshit. Now, I'm not saying they've experienced what they claim they experienced, but alarm's going off. Hang on 1 second. Okay, sorry about that. You could have carried on without me.
Oh,
sorry. No,
I was
we're in the middle of asking a question.
No, I had to turn off my alarm. My time to get up.
Sorry to make dead air there, but
no, it's cool. So anyways, like I said, I think there's something to be said by people who have these types of experiences. Now, what they are, I can't say. I'm not putting any truth value to what their conclusions are, right? But I want to believe that they actually have had some kind of experience, whatever it is. It could be 100% natural, could be something more supernatural. I do not know. But there is something to be said that so many people have some type of deity belief.
Right.
So I don't want to just like pass it off, in the same garbage bin as shit like fairies and stuff.
But are you trying to make it like a reductionist argument where you think it's just some kind of part of the brain that has a propensity towards it, and then
no, not at all. I mean,
I think he was saying that's a possibility, but
yeah, that's a possibility. Whatever the reason is, you can't dismiss outright that people don't have these type of experiences across the board for a very long time. And here's the thing: you don't see people going to war if leprechauns exist. You don't see people going to war if fairies exist.
No, I'm joking.
but I mean this very sincerely. The God concept has had people going to war for centuries. These people have had fanaticisms over these concepts. Why is that, right? Maybe there is one God out there, but he's Loki, and he's just fucking with everybody.
Or Luke.
We've had
That's
that
also
conversation,
Luke,
right?
yeah.
That it may be that there's one god and this happens to be a trickster, but the that's where you make monotheism coherent, is if monotheists believed in a trickster deity. But even then it has problems. Never mind. Shoot, there was a response that I had to that, and it's gone. Oh, as far as war over religion, if you I've love history, you know this, and when looking for wars that were like purely religious based, there's not a whole lot of them outside of Christianity. And this is one of the problems that I have with Christianity. Well, okay, outside of exclusive monotheistic beliefs. So when you have Judaism, when you have Islam, when you have Christianity, and Judaism less so, but you see the Old Testament where they're not worshiping the one true God, therefore we have to commit genocide. Or with Christianity, these dirty polytheists in Eastern Europe, we have to get rid of them. Or with Islam, with the Semitic polytheists, or with
the other Arabian cultures and stuff like in India,
right? Or Zoroastrianism,
or in Zoroastrianism is still around actually, but it's really small.
True, but
split.
Islam was against Zoroastrianism. It was also against Semitic polytheism, like the local Arabian polytheists.
But is it? Or sorry.
Well, so my question is, do we see very many examples of polytheists doing this? And sometimes, but not very many times. It's become the number winds up declining significantly once you start trying to find polytheist examples of this activity. So it's not God belief that's causing this. It's exclusivity approaches to monotheism that wind up saying, you are so wrong about your worship of your God threatens my worship of my God, such to the point that I'm going to solve the problem by murdering you.
Well, it's exclusivity and the injection of it into the government, because the Catholic Church was really the only government after the fall of Rome, and during all the scattering and the barbarian raids, it was really the only stable government that everyone clinged to.
Let's not pretend that the Roman religion wasn't involved in government.
Well, yeah, but it was gone before then. By the time the Roman Empire fell, it was pretty much Christian.
Right, but what I'm saying is, like, as far as finding out what the problem is, the problem isn't necessarily the involvement of religion in government when it comes to
I'm saying it's
that kind of
exclusivity
behavior.
plus that. It's exclusivity plus the government and religion, or the religion and government.
Okay, you're saying that the addition of government with the exclusivity is part of the cocktail. Yeah,
I don't think exclusivity is just. I don't think that's the only issue with the religious wars, but I think it has to be within the government as well.
I would agree. I think I agree with you, because a lot of the examples that we're talking about are, say, like when you have feudal lords with Christian reasoning behind them, or with a caliphate with Christian reasoning behind them, or an emperor with Christian reasoning behind it, or like, with Muslim or whatever.
Like Jehovah's
I think I said caliphate with Christian reasoning behind. That's not what I meant. But
like Jehovah's Witnesses are exclusive, but they aren't going to war. So I mean, I think you have to be in the government to really make a bigger dent than it could.
So here's an example. Genghis Khan is brought up. Wasn't Genghis Khan a polytheist? And I believe that's true. He was a shamanist. Tingri, I believe, was the name of his religion. Well, it's Tingri. It's not outside of polytheism necessarily.
Yes, you're right. It's like ancestor gods and stuff.
But the question about Genghis Khan is, was the reason for his wars religious? I don't think so. Like, you definitely had polytheists fighting for land. You definitely had polytheists fighting for political reasons, and occasionally religion figured into backing it up. But it wasn't because your God is wrong, therefore we must kill you. That wasn't part of the discussion. It was, maybe our gods are backing us up. But with a polytheist framework, you would expect that, and you would expect that maybe these other people's gods were backing them up, or something like that. But the point is, it's not that their worship offends us, right? It's going to be whereas you get that with monotheism, that the polytheist worship offends us. It threatens our deity. so we have to destroy them. I'm done. Steve.
Yeah, well, that sounds okay. I mean, sounds good to me. But I gotta get ready for.
I dumped history on you. I'm sorry.
Yeah, no, hit me in history are not that great of friends, right?
Yeah, no, I guess it's true. That's how to win a fight with Steve, guys. Bring up history and just word barf him.
Yeah. I'm just gonna be like, yeah, you know what? I'm gonna agree with that. So, but anyways, Cingeto, thanks for dropping by, coming by more on our hangouts. Ocean,
thank you for letting me come too.
Access,
appreciate it.
So we're gonna be doing a lot of these things. So I'm looking forward to having more discussions on like this because I'm fascinated by these types of discussions, and I think Ocean gets unfairly excessive amount of shit from people for his beliefs, and it's just like
he does.
I don't get
it. You should see it on Twitter. People call us.
No, Steve and I are good friends on Twitter.
Yeah.
Okay.
I know Cingeto from Twitter, so he knows my Twitter stuff.
Steve gets more shit from Twitter than I do.
Yeah.
Really? Well, yeah, but Steve doesn't care that much what he puts on Twitter, so that's to be expected.
Fair point.
Was that some shade? Did I see some shade?
No, but it's not incorrect.
No, that's also you do also like highlight that you don't give a fuck.
Yeah, you said it. I've listened to you, Steve. I did research on you before I could talk to you because I was scared.
What?
But no. So point is, this is essentially me pushing Cingeto towards you was being like, hey, Steve's a great way to introduce yourself into the great debate environment, and definitely shoot him a link for discussions because I think that he knows a lot and he's learning quickly, and I'm pretty impressed with him.
Yeah, no, that sounds awesome. I'm looking forward to having more conversations with him, and I like bringing new people into the community. So I like having diversification too. So polytheist, yeah, that'd be awesome to get more of them involved in these discussions because they fuck with everybody, right? I mean, because atheists is going, what the hell are they talking about? And the Christians going, they're theists, but they're not one of mine.
Right. And I'm tired of being the only fucking one.
Well, you're not anymore.
Right.
We got two.
Now we have another one.
But you have more than that. They don't come around much.
They're not. A lot of them don't get onto the voice chat conversation very much. Like Callan is awesome. She's she's a Wiccan, and she's funny. She's a philosophical polytheist, and she's hilarious. But she doesn't do the voice chat thing very much. She kind of sticks to Twitter. But she's awesome. I've like seeing her get into fights with people on Twitter is entertaining for me to read, especially because like her stuff is, I call it like Scottish typos. Would that be accurate, Cingeto? She's a lot of her typos wind up reading like a Scottish accent.
Never heard that term before, but I guess kind of, yeah. But she's also really good against like Abrahamic religions because she knows the Semitic.
She follows Baal.
Yeah, and that really irritates them.
Right.
Like Baal, really?
Yes.
SJ hates that.
She follows Baal.
Yeah, SJ thinks. Yeah, so she thinks Baal is too. I think though. SJ really thinks that those
her
guys.
Her and SJ Thomason get into it like crazy because she's a Baal worshiper. It's hilarious to watch. Because it's just like SJ will start talking about how those worshippers of Baal were such evil people and sacrificing the children and shit, and Callan's just like, "Excuse me." It's great.
But the best part is that I read an article, and they actually, from archaeological evidence, they don't think they sacrificed babies. They think that was a thing for stillbirths.
Right. No, I've brought that up to SJ a few times, and she just tries to railroad it. So it's like you're talking about funerary customs. Imagine cremating your child and then going to jail for infanticide.
Well, that's way less as harsh than what happened to them when they got invaded and killed.
Right. So you're going under the death penalty because you had a funeral.
Mm-hmm. And that's what it looks like from the archaeological evidence, which is very interesting to me.
Right.
Because it just shows the political propaganda in those books.
But anywho, I'll pass it back off.
Anyways,
I know you want to end the show.
I have no choice. I'm being inundated here. So I forgive me if I tuned out for the last few minutes there. I did.
Poor you.
I'm not gonna lie about it. So whatever. I mean, but we'll continue this more. And like I said, come back on Thursday. You're more than welcome to join us for our discussion on anti-theism, because we're gonna have some people kind of argue against anti-theism. And I'm trying to really evaluate both sides. I mean, both sides make good arguments. and it's one of those things that is up for debate, right? I mean, it's not like the flat Earth
Right.
stuff, which is not up to debate.
What are you talking about? Of course, the Earth is the giant tree.
Yeah,
If you want people to argue against anti-theism, I'm happy to be one of those guys at one point.
yeah.
I could do that. I need to research a ton, but I could try.
I could do it soon if you wanted to.
All right,
But yeah,
all right. Well, we'll see you all soon then. And
Okay, sounds
tonight
good.
we have S.J. Thomason and Apologia. So
Awesome. Is that the anti-theist conversation?
no, they're having a discussion on
Jesus is historicity, right?
more specifically the facts about Christianity. With
The minimal facts argument?
minimal facts argument. Yeah, basically,
Okay.
Jesus crucified with Pontius Pilate. Her minimal facts. I'm used to having like 4 or 5 things for minimal facts. I think she has like 8.
Ooh.
Oh,
So
well, that's not
yeah.
minimal because there's other arguments with 5.
Yeah, I thought the minimal facts argument was 5.
Yeah, it's 5.
Okay.
All right. Well, thank you, Steve, for letting me come on. I really appreciate it. This was fun.
Yeah, thank you, man. Good seeing you. And Ocean, always a pleasure. And I got to go
Absolutely.
for the next round. So see you then.